Dan the Artman's Book Reviews, Episode 82, The Wizard's Butler, by Nathan Lowell. This was a real treat. Lowell is one of my favorite authors. His authorial voice is mesmerizing and calming. I've never read stories quite like his anywhere else. They have an easy way about them, yet keep you turning the pages and wanting more. Reading them is a comfort. I love living in his worlds. It was really fun to read something modern with a splash of fantasy, rather than the beloved sci-fi and fantasy of his I've read. This story made me laugh and shout while listening to it on runs, in planes, and at home. The characters became friends, and I really grew to love them, other than the antagonist, of course. But even she was always a welcome visitor to the story and made it more fun and humorous. I love the subtle yet incredibly rewarding character arc of the main character, Mulligan. I don't doubt I will listen to this story again someday. Also, the narrator, Tom Taylorson, was incredible and perfect for this book as the characters. As I think on why I would want to read this book again, I think it is because it was such an enjoyable story to experience alongside the character, and while reading it, I felt like I was in a place I would choose to be. The characters are all very different than me, and come from very different backgrounds and have much different life experiences than I do, and yet they were all very relatable and easy to like. I'm not sure what it is about these Nathan Lowell books, but I just love all the quiet scenes where the character is doing nothing earth-shattering, but you just get it and somehow know how important those moments are for them and the journey they're on. I wonder if the reason I like his books are the same reasons I love coming-of-age books. While this book is certainly not a coming-of-age book, it is a book about a main character discovering how they can get on in the world they live in. It's almost like a second chance at coming of age, or a book about finding out what other new life a character can live out. I also don't want to give the impression that nothing much happens in this book. All the scenes were awesome, and there was plenty of friction between characters. Many cool, unexpected things happen. I guess we readers just have a hard time describing why we love books like this so much, because they're so different than most books. Most books try hard to have as much tension or action in every scene as they can. Not classics, but modern speculative fiction like this great urban fantasy novel. So, when we read a book and it tells a story in a much different way, yet one that is so satisfying and enjoyable, we struggle to put our thumb on why it works so well when it bucks the trends of most fiction. I've recently read a book I'll review in a future episode called Legends and Lattes that gives this same kind of vibe, and it is described as cozy fantasy. Now, I've heard of a cozy mystery, but this is different. I've also heard the term slice of life thrown around. I think that's getting at the idea that the story is about an average person going through life, not a prince who was the chosen one or whatever. Anyway, I highly recommend this read, and I'm sure I'll read it again when I'm looking to dip back into a world I love. I also loved the length of this book, which gives it great rereading potential in my mind. You can easily knock this book out in a week. Another great book by Nathan Lowell. Awesome. Little bit of history from me on my audiobook listening and internet history, I don't know. There was a great website back in the day called podiobooks.com where people would self-publish their novels as podcast episodes. So, pretty much audiobooks. As a somewhat new audiobook listener, I don't know, back in like 2007 or something, someone will correct me on that, some great podcast fiction was coming out on this website, and Nathan Lowell wanted to try his hand at writing a novel. So he wrote the first in his Trader's Tales adventures. where the main character has to get off planet and take like the lowest of the low, a quarter share position on this merchant vessel, a spaceship that travels around, and he just works in the kitchen. And the story is not like other sci-fi novels I've read, but it's easily one of my favorites because it's the same slice of life, cozy feel that I have grown to truly love. Don't get me wrong, I love adventure novels where every scene is just driving the plot forward and there's tons of action and fighting and intrigue and world building, but man, there's just something special about these kinds of slice of life cozy reads. I love them. And I honestly think I should try to write something like that. And maybe I already did when I wrote, I don't know, I think it was like my second or third novel I ever wrote, which has still never been published. Even though a ton of beta readers read it and gave me feedback, I still had not learned story structure, so it's terrible. But I often would get little snippets of feedback where I think I probably wasn't pulling it off well to try and tell like an action-adventure sci-fi novel story with big stakes, but with more of a cozy feel to it. I think I also just probably shouldn't have tried writing a sci-fi novel when I hadn't read a ton of sci-fi yet, even though it's one of my favorite genres. I just still feel like I'm not super well read in that genre. It's probably not true anymore, but I also have this great love of this game series called Wing Commander, because between the missions where you're flying in dogfights and protecting a big ship as you escort them to like a jump at some navigation point out in space, you could walk around the bar and talk to the other pilots and the guy at the bar, and it was just cool to have this storytelling element in a game between. And it had like really chill music, so you just felt like you were in the game between the super tense dogfighting and missions where the music would change. If there were enemies on the screen or in the area, the music would change and be dramatic and stress you out. And then you'd go and chill between missions and talk and learn how to fly better against different kinds of pilots. Anyway, I'm getting way off base about the Wizard's Butler, but what do you guys think about slice of life or cozy fiction? Have you read any of it? I would give this book a try as your first dip into it, and then try Legends and Lattes or one of Nathan Lowell's other really great books. He has a lot of them out there now, and I've never read anything of his that I didn't just really love soaking up. I don't know, as I try and find more time to write, among many other things like podcasting, I also just started a Bible study podcast I'm super excited about, and I'm trying to put out episodes regularly, unlike I do for this show. But I'm really interested to keep finding more cozy reads and eventually try to write something in that genre. So like I said, you're going to love this book. I think it will surprise you in so many different really cool ways, and you'll thank me for picking it up. That's all I've got for you guys in this episode. Until next time, thanks for listening, and happy reading.
This podcast is brought to you by DanDanTheArtman.com, where you can find more book reviews, entries on Dan's writing journey, and links to purchase Dan's books, like Haunted House Flipper or The Case of the Missing Snowman. Music by Dan Absalonson.